going to invite Cade Zvavanjanja, Rutendo Mugadza, and Chakama. Thank you, and welcome to our first panel discussion of the day. And it's good that Takunda was mentioned ChatGPT. So I went to the Zim developers. They had an event. I think it was in March, and so I went there. So my background is in an accounting, and so I was there with developers, and I don't know, so the thing that kept popping was ChatGPT, this and that. And so I went back home, and obviously I had some tasks I needed to do. So Tonga just says to me, write this for me, write that for me. So then someone said, you must try it. And then the next thing, ChatGPT requires a, what do they call it? VPN. And so I was like, but this thing is so hard to navigate. But anyway, I finally got ChatGPT, and man, I wish I had found out about it like 2 years ago. It made my whole life so simple. So someone mentioned something and said, you know what? Someone wrote like a first page for their novel, right? And then they put it to ChatGPT, and then they asked ChatGPT to finish the book. So then it did, but then they were told that, so this book is not yours anymore. But I'm thinking, how come? Because this is my story, right? I gave you a starting point, so how then are you now saying it's not my story? So I think this is what we want to talk about, right? Where does it start when it comes to ownership of or rights to your content, right? So here I'm with Rutendo Mugadza, Mr. Cade Zvavanjanja, and Chakama. Chakama is a web developer. Mr. Cade Zvavanjanja is, he specializes in cybersecurity. Sorry, I'm just gonna give them more time to introduce themselves. And then also Rutendo is into IP ownership, so that's tech IP ownership. So yes, welcome, and I'll just give you some time to introduce yourselves, and then we can get into the discussion.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Faith. So my name is Rutendo Mugadza. I'm a lawyer by profession. I specialize in intellectual property and technology law. I'm also the founder of ZILTA, Zimbabwe Innovation and Legal Tech Association. So I spend most of my time with a lot of entrepreneurs and techies like yourself, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rutendo.
Is it morning? Is it afternoon?
It's still morning.
It depends where you're freelancing from.
Right. Yeah.
All right, morning everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Cade. I wear different and many hats, but for today, I'm Cade. Glad to meet you.
Right. Hi everyone. 1, 2. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Chakama. I'm sure most of you know me, but I don't know you from our tech spaces. I mean, I also wear a lot of hats. I am a developer, I am a mentor, I'm an innovator, but basically I'm a full stack developer who's done work all over the world, from Europe, Nigeria, Rwanda, everywhere, doing mostly remote work, so freelancing most of the time. But yeah, I've also built some of my own tools, like Hear Me, which is a tool that helps people with speech impairments that I built sometime in 2021, 2020 I think, or 2021 there, which got me some recognition all over the world, interviews with BBC, ZBC, some radio stations and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just me in a nutshell. I mean, I'll tell you more about me as we proceed with this. Yeah, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So I'll start with you, George, as a web developer, and you have been working, I'm sure you have worked on many projects before. So my question to you is, what are the challenges that you face as developers when it comes to IP ownership?
All right. So when it comes to intellectual property ownership, I mean, some of the challenges that we face is when you're building your own tool and then it comes to you releasing it now, and unengone like that fear, yeguti, if I release it out there, who, like, for example, you want to release it, you're used to like deploying it online and then just people using it there. But as the numbers grow of people using it now, there's that fear, what if someone steals it and then they build something similar to this? So I tend to see a lot of developers, like they have a lot of ideas out there, but then they don't release them to the public because they don't know like the right procedures to say, okay, if I release it, how then can I protect it? And I would say that one of the major challenges with that is, registering that idea is yours. Like, it's quite expensive in Zimbabwe, looking at the situation that we have is in the economy and stuff like that.
Okay. Why do you fear that someone else might take your idea? Because there are people or there are systems that were developed, and then some people, I believe, came in and they developed similar systems. So why is it an issue that someone might steal your idea?
I mean, they can exit, because most of the time it's when you have an idea, you're working alone, right, as an individual, and then releasing that idea somewhere. You don't have like that, I would say maybe influence, your idea will grow further and stuff like that. And you might share your idea with someone where they have the right resources and the right funds and stuff like that, that they can take that idea, make that idea theirs, and then when they release it, with the attention that they get, it will make it seem like they are the actual owners of that idea, that they came up with that idea. So I think with most developers, right, what they do is they have an idea, they build it, and then they start looking for funding now and sponsorship so that they can release that idea to the world with the right, backup for their project.
Okay, awesome. I'll come to you, Mr. Zvavanjanja. So you have George here, a web developer, and you said that you're a man of many hits, right? And he wants to be mentored by you. And what advice are you going to give him regarding ownership of IP, and how will you advise him to retain the work that he would have done?
All right. Thank you. Do I give him an invoice afterwards?
Well, I guess it's all of us.
All right, so thank you. I'll tackle the question from almost a multidisciplinary perspective, wearing the hat as an economist, also as a legal mind, and also as a cybersecurity person. Yes. IP on its own and protecting your work, which is the works of the mind, one of the fundamentals which we have to be understood and to be taken into consideration is the legal frameworks that are there. What protects and what makes IP, IP? Starting with Zimbabwe, I think my learned colleague here would look at it also. These 7, 8 different legislations that we have, which defines and sets what's IP in Zimbabwe, in the Zimbabwean context. And moving from the Zimbabwean context, looking at ZIPO, the Intellectual Property Office, the Patent Office, so forth, going to ARIPO, going to WIPO, and all other treaties which we are members of, sets the context of intellectual property. But that's not enough. Coming to him, what is the life cycle of creating something of the mind? Starting from having an idea, executing an idea, and finally making money from an idea. So many times we have a founder. I think I see a lot of founders here. Where we have a founder that is starting to develop something, starting to write a code in something, starting to register a website, starting a storyline. But that founder is not the same legal persona with the company they're going to register. So we start to have the first separation of persons and ownership there. We have a founder that has created a Zvavanjanja Incorporated or a Zvavanjanja Global. And the Zvavanjanja Global from just because I'm a founder, thinks it owns what I've created as the founder, which is not so. That is one of the first levels. The second level, once Zvavanjanja Global comes into play, it starts to employ people who are writing, reading, doing work, and creating there. What are the legal instruments which we have put in place administratively, technical-wise, and even policy-wise, and even management controls that we've put in place to protect the IP which they are creating? Many times, he's talented, come and start work, but there are no protection, there are no contracts, there are no agreements which are there. The third level of protection that may be needed there is where we are having freelancers that are coming in, contractors that are coming in, who owns the information and the IP of what they're creating. Without clear-cut contracts and agreements, it's usually, if it's a freelancer or a contractor that comes in, they own the IP, in as much as, excuse me, in as much as you've paid them to do the work. The fourth level now, the platforms that you are using to create the work itself. For instance, if you use AI, currently the jurisprudence or what's there within the legal environment, it's not yet very clear because there's not yet been pronounced by court of laws, and legislation is still lagging behind, and there is no precedence in most of the cases there. If a work is generated by using maybe ChatGPT, who actually owns the work, who owns the IP, apart from maybe the agreement, which you just say nest, and click without reading. So those four pillars: who is the founder, who is the creator, who is the custodian, who is controlling the agreements among those parties, and what platforms are using. If you manage all those things, you manage your full ecosystem of your IP from creation to the market. With putting proper controls, legal controls, technical controls, managerial controls, and administrative controls, you will be able to secure your IP. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Cade. And coming to you, Rutendo, so we've been told of these 4 classes, right? And so what are the risks of not being prepared really for what may happen if they may arise any issues? Say, I know that at AfriBlogs we have clients, right, that may need video editing services. So if we don't have an agreement from the start, and so maybe the freelancer says, I'm the one that edited this video, or okay, maybe not a video. Let's say he says that I'm the one that mixed a soundtrack to a video, and then he wants to use it on another project, and then this client says, no, but I paid you for this, etc. How do we navigate through those issues when the actual issue actually arises?
Okay, so I think Cade took every word right out of my mouth. I don't even think I still have anything else to say. But I think the biggest problem when it comes to entrepreneurs and techies is the fear, like what George rightfully said. So it's, okay, I'm going to go and pitch my idea, right? Let's start from there. I pitch my idea and they're going to take my idea. So I'd rather die with my idea. And I've also seen it's because of the lack of updated legislation, like what Cade rightfully said. Right now, everyone is talking about AI, let's do this, let's incorporate it, but the legislation itself still lacks. Looking at maybe Zimbabwe, we don't even really understand what it means. All of us in this room, we do understand, but this is a smaller population compared to This is a smaller population compared to the people who need to actually appreciate what it means, enough for them to then update the laws, you see. So if we start from there, right, updating the laws, actually understanding what is blockchain, what is AI, I feel like it would be easier. Going on to the developers themselves, right, the biggest problem that's there is that you don't like to have lawyers as your friend. I'm just going to say it, guys. And I understand you, right? And I'm an entrepreneur myself. I probably can't even afford myself. You know, that's the biggest problem. So I feel like as long as you are a developer, as long as you are in the software space, as long as you are in the development space, you are supposed to have a legal mind that then does the work for you, right? So it's contractual. Contractual then also stipulates who owns the work, because like you said, freelancing, you're doing someone's work. Are you being commissioned to do that work? What does it mean? If I'm given a tender to develop a software for a big company, do I still own the code? Or do I release it to them? What then happens? So it's all contractual stuff that people don't like to pay attention to. We all sign over our rights. So click, what you say, click next, because I don't have time. It's in fine print, and they do that for a reason, because they know you won't have the time to read. So it's also important that when you start, whether it's in your career or whether it's your company, just know that, okay, fine, I'm aiming to be a bigger person one day. I'm aiming to be one of the Microsofts, the Googles of this world. Let me invest. So investing means investing in the legal mind. It means someone who will then help me in understanding what does intellectual property mean. Because we all have logos, we all have software codes, we all have anything that you create with your mind that can be put into tangible format, and it gives you simple copyright protection. Now, the problem with copyright protection is that you are protected automatically, right? As long as you type it out or whatever, you write it or whatever, you're protected. But now when it comes to infringement, how can I prove that I typed it first? You know? And how can I prove that I'm the one who had it in my mind and someone else thought about it and they typed it, but I had it in my mind? So who owns it? You know? So it's those issues that then come about. And when you then now approach or when you share, I think one of the former Director General of Aripo used to say, Africans like to share. So you are a team of developers. Okay, guys, what's the problem? Let's come up with a solution. You come up with a solution, and then you share. But you don't know what the next person is capable of. Or you don't know who you're sharing to, like what George said. You could be sharing to someone who has the funds. And because you are so excited, you're just sharing. You know, you're giving away your ideas. And then you see your product next on the market, and you're like, but guys, how did this happen? You know? So many software developers, not software developers, but many developers or entrepreneurs are dying or are getting into depression mainly because of their ideas. They don't want to share. You don't want to share because you're scared someone will steal it, right? But if you now have someone with a legal mind, right, who can then assist you, say, okay, fine, what is it you want to feel comfortable? Some clients are also like, but okay, should I share with you? And I'm like, but you do know I'm a legal practitioner, right? You do know I, by oath, right, ethics, if you are not satisfied, you feel like I've shared your ideas, you can go ahead and report me to the regulator. But it's still a thing that's around people where they don't feel comfortable enough to just share, even if you are sharing to the right person. So I really feel like some of the risks that are associated with that are theft, infringement and the like. And right now, like what Cade was saying, not many statutes support machine-generated works. So right now, everything is still contractual. Do you just have a basic contract that stipulates that you're going to create an app for this company, and when you're done with the app, this is what you're going to do? So whether you used open source or whatever it is, what does it mean? Who owns it? If you are an employee or if you are the employer, you know, you're so excited as an employee, you realize there's a technical problem within the company, you come up with a solution, and then you go to your boss, you share, boss, I have this, and boss is like, nice and fun, gonna. And then they take it up to the CEO, they're like, great. And then they realize value out of the company. I'm not sure if we've all heard about the Vodacom case, right? This was simple, clear-cut IP that happened. You know, an accountant from whatever department decided to come up with something that realized maybe 4.5 billion in revenue for Vodacom, and he only got his salary at the end of the day. Then you're like, but guys, I came up with this guy, you know? So it's also important that as long as you are employed, as long as you are a techie, and as long as you are in this hysteria of developing, just ask your boss, do you have an IP policy? Right? It's simple. Do you have an IP policy? Because I would like to share my solution to you. And then they're like, IP policy, what is it about? No, it will just govern who owns what, right? As an employee, maybe I'll get 30%. As the company, you get 70, it's fine. As long as maybe even if I'm a university student, does the university have an IP policy, right? As a student, maybe I'll get 50, the department gets 10, the varsity then gets 20 or whatever it is. It's just simple documents that then just governs all these relationships. So yeah, that's what I can say.
Okay, I want to come to you, George. So, as developers, are you guys discussing IP ownership as friends, as colleagues, as you work together? Or is really your motivation just, I got this gig and it's, it's this much money, I just want to get the money and do this? Are you guys looking at the future? Are you guys thinking about what IP means to you, or is it just about, you know, an immediate need for the money? Like, how far have you guys as developers gone into discussing this issue of IP and seeing how you can resolve the issues that arise?
All right. I'm also a co-founder for Zim Developers, and sometime earlier this year, we had a Twitter space where we brought a lawyer actually to come and also talk on these issues. And I'd say that, you know, as much as we cover these these discussions on IP and everything like that, there's always that aspect of the paperwork, because, you know, as a developer, you spend most of your time on your PC working there. So when it comes now to the process, you are now supposed to do the paperwork. You are working with lawyers, engaging these guys for your products and stuff like that. You know, when you think of that process in your mind, you're like, this is something else, really. So you end up, you know, just building your project and then releasing it out there. But then now when someone steals it, that's when you start thinking, now, okay, I wish I did this, and I wish I'd engaged in something like this. So I'd say maybe like it's really, the issue really has to do with, you know, that journey actually. When you say, you know, we finally have a paper that says, you know what, this is my product and I can sue anyone who has it. Yeah, it just takes time. But then I know some few guys who are actually doing it. And there was also even a case, because with the things that we build now, our code and everything like that, my case is you've actually made this code on your own. They are quite rare. I mean, you're using code that's already been done by someone else, but then you are using it in a better way, something like that. But there's also an issue of my licenses. If you're going to be using a library that you're using within your project, you actually have to mention it. So sometimes maybe there's like a whole project that uses a lot of libraries. So you pinpointing each and every one now and writing it down like, okay, this one I'm giving them their credit, this one I'm giving them their credit. It's also a tedious process. And I think that's another reason why, you know, most developers are not really, you know, launching more products or, you know, having ownership of their projects. They'd rather build that project within a company and say, you know what, the company will end up somewhere. These guys will be in charge of it. Me, I'm just a developer who just built the software. I have my stake that I've been given in the company and shares, something like that. But if it has to do with the paperwork for the project, it's best handled by, you know, the guys who are doing accounting, whatever, somewhere like that.
Okay, so I want to come to Cade, but before I do that, I just want Rutendo to help George. He mentioned that he thinks that the whole process is difficult or probably boring, but what are you as lawyers doing in raising awareness to people and encouraging them to protect their work? So that could be developers, that could be creatives. Is there any work that you're doing to raise awareness, or are you hoping that someone might just bump into a problem and then they would think that, there was Rutendo at that event, maybe I need to go there? Because to me it sounds like it's a new thing, a new space, and really people may not know. But what work are you doing as legal practitioners to raise awareness?
Okay, so when it comes to intellectual property, right, it's more of a specialized field. So not many legal practitioners are in it, and also because it requires patience, right? So you get certain patient individuals like myself who are willing to actually give you the information for free. So sitting on platforms like these give me exposure and the time to actually educate entrepreneurs and techies about the importance of intellectual property itself. So it also takes us getting into innovation hubs and the like, these type of spaces where most entrepreneurs are getting into, so that you then just give them free advice. For me personally, it's me as an individual, right? Giving, free advice. Because I then realize that, okay, in as much as, yes, I want money, but if I then don't educate you on why you need to protect your brand or whatever it is, then how are you going to come to me eventually, right? So it takes a lot of patience. So you might get, yes, others here and there saying, okay, we do it, we don't, and whatever, but they want money upfront, or they want what, which can be a hindrance to people, because you are still in the infant stage, you're still developing, you're still also trying to figure yourself out. So it could be something that most professionals don't have time for. So for me, what I do is I basically go door to door. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people, I'm sure, like Simba, sorry to pin you out, right? I nag them, because I want to educate your developer. I want to educate your teams on the basic principles of intellectual property and why they should protect their works. But the biggest problem that I've also seen is, in as much as I'm telling the developers and whoever that, guys, let's protect the systems behind it. Like what he said, he mentioned the issues of fees, right? The costs associated. It's something that's way beyond my control. At some point, when I also wanted to just register my trademark, I mean, I took some time. I had to think about it, because the costs, they're quite pricey, right? For someone who's really starting, someone who's just starting from the ground up. But I feel like it's more of an investment. If you really sit down and, strategize, have a plan. Okay, guys, maybe by this month, I just want to register a company. After registering a company, I want to register my trademark, for example. Just do it in stages, because it's also important. You also don't want to put in the work, and then after 2 days, someone then just steals your idea just like that, and you can't prove, because when you have to go to court, who is the owner? That's the first question. Who is the owner of this? And paperwork is things that maybe on an administrative level just has to be done. So if you have the right people, I guess, around you that you share with, or that are part of your team, it's going to be easier, because there's not much paperwork. If it comes to the IP side, okay, fine, I have someone who then does that. If it comes to the accounting, you already have someone who does that. So it'll be easier for you. So before you actually sit down and start whatever project it is, or start to code or whatever it is, if you have a plan in place, you would know that by then I want to do this. And then it also then protects you from some of these problems, because I also then realized that people only want legal advice when they're in a problem. After wabirwa trademark yacho, then you're like, but I could have done this. But there are other preventative measures. Of course, they are quite pricey, but it's something that you then have to invest in, because some of these organizations that then give you the platform, whether it's to register and whatever, they're not really thinking about Zimbabwe. Okay, so I'm just going to say it, Aripo. I'm sorry, but it's a regional organization and it's based in Zimbabwe, but they're not thinking about Zimbabwe only. They've got other 20 African countries that they think about. So even if Zimbabwe comes and cries and says, "Ish, our developers can't afford your fees," it's not their problem, because Zimbabweans are not the highest number of patent filers, right? Not many patents that are being filed are coming from Zimbabwe. They are coming from China. They are coming from the US, because they want to protect in Africa. Because like what, who said 600 million? It was Mr. Maponderan, right? Yes. Because they know in Africa there's a lot of people. So they would want to just protect in Zimbabwe. And they have the funds, unfortunately. And maybe we don't have the funds. So when it comes to these regional organizations, they won't be able to then cater to you and your problems. It's still a long process, but hopefully we'll get there.
Okay, awesome. So lastly, to Cade, you mentioned that there is need to update laws, right? And you gave us those 4 points that you mentioned in the beginning. So of the existing laws, are they enough to protect. So while we're waiting for, I don't know, who is going to update them, is it enough protection for people really? Is it okay, or do we just wait, and while we're waiting, are people going to suffer? Or for now, Tongoti, ayo, shakanaka shakada.
All right, so I wish I would say I pass. All right, so if we look at the laws that are there in Zimbabwe, we have about 7 laws that deal with IP. And we have about 7 categories that deal with IP law in Zimbabwe. Is the law enough? Or is the law not enough? I'll answer it with a yes or a no, or with a lawyer's answer. It depends. Why do I say it depends? One, if you look at some of the laws that we have just run around them, we have the Copyright and Neighboring Acts, we have the Patent Act, we have the Geographical Acts, we have the Industrial Circuit Acts, and we have the third one, the Trademarks Act. That is within Zimbabwe. And among those acts, we also have international law or international treaties which Zimbabwe is part of. For instance, the WIPO, we have the NIDIA, and other, I think about 6, 7 others. But are those enough? You find when legislators do law, they don't do what is now becoming a norm, soft law kind of a thing, which is technology-based. They do generic law. So with generic laws, they cover general issues that are there. So law itself is actually catching up to technology. Because with creation of laws, it's either the law is created by the legislature or is then defined or forced to be created when issues happen and the judiciary see that there's a gap. But one of the things with Africa, in as much as the issues we are dealing with are justiciable law, which laws can be tested before a court of law can, or you can look for legal means to resolve, we are not putting our courts to test. We are not taking our issues to test. Henceforth, you find a lot of times when you're dealing with IP, technology, case law, we go to South Africa. We quote that because the test within our local environment is not happening. We are not taking things before the courts for the courts to give us interpretation and to give us precedence, per se. So is the law enough? Hard law which we have, I think it's scattered in Zimbabwe. As I mentioned, we have about 7 different legal frameworks that are oral legislations there. But currently, global-wise, law is actually trying to catch up to technology. Hence, you see recently the EU managed to put law to do with AI, so forth, which we're calling soft law, which is now technology-specific. But will that be enough? Not really. From 2 standpoints. The procedural law to deal when an issue happens, how it is adjudicated, what's the procedure, interpreting laws of interpretation of evidence, laws of evidence. If somebody has an accident with a Tesla that is autonomous, who are the witnesses there? And how do you adjudicate that digital evidence in a court of law? What's the current procedure within the Criminal Procedure and Evidence Act? What's the procedure within the Cybercrime and Data Protection Act in terms of admissibility of that evidence? So you find laws, by their very nature, they will always try to catch up to technology. And if we go now to substantive law, it's still also trying to catch up to technology, because many times laws is created based on the aspirations of the people and the values of the people at that particular time. And 10 years ago, who had thought I could write a PhD thesis in 30 minutes? Doc, who would have thought, and I submit to him, and you kept me with his team. In 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, with full reference, with the full citations, with all the structures there, just putting the right prompts, copying and pasting, what took 3-4 years to do, who would have thought? So all those things, law will never be enough. But what should be taken into consideration? We shouldn't under-legislate, we shouldn't over-legislate. But law is a living thing, will continue to catch up to technology. Thank you.
Awesome. So we are just right behind time, but I'm just going to take a question or two from you. Okay. All right, I'll start with the doctor.
I have a question for the lawyer, which is a very rare thing to do without being charged. Your understanding, it's clear that you are understanding the space which we are operating in. I'm really wondering why lawyers are not being innovative enough to realize that their value does not have to come at the beginning, but they can come post factor. So that yeah, I rest my case. And also, I'm also asking Cade, I know why he didn't want to. We have got a whole ministry of ICT. What is its role in this whole thing? Because surely, if it is a ministry called ICT,
If you don't know.
What happens here stays here, so yes.
All right, so maybe to answer your question, I feel like the legal profession is quite rigid and traditional, right? We have a set system of how we want things to happen. And most of us in our professional settings, so it could be in private practice or whatever it is. So as long as you are in that box, right, and you tell yourself that there's a traditional way of doing things, a client comes in, we give them consultation, we file their papers and so on, you are not even able to even understand what's happening outside. I only got to this point because I took myself out of that comfortable zone, right? So only when I started interacting with a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, that's when I then realized that, guys, we need to change the system. So this is what I'm trying to do with Zilta. I'm trying to educate the lawyers themselves. I'm trying to educate the law graduates themselves that, guys, it's akuna babas, right? We can't all be private practice lawyers. We can't all be magistrates. We can't all be company secretaries. There's no jobs. So we know that the biggest problem when it comes to accessing justice or accessing legal services is because maybe people can't afford or people don't know how and where. So why don't we create legal tech solutions that then just bridge the gap and make legal services accessible? Why don't we create solutions that accelerate that process? So until then, when we get to that point, when we come out of our comfort zones, then we'll have more lawyers interacting in these spaces, more lawyers being open, because also it takes patience, right? And we are for the money, we are looking for money. So it also takes patience and a passion for you to just be out here speaking to people, giving advice for free. Eventually, when they become unicorns, I don't know, somewhere out there, right? Then they'll remember that, okay, there was that lawyer who then told us about this, then they can help us. So I really feel like the legal system itself is quite rigid. And in some other African countries, they are now understanding the importance of legal tech or just technology on its own. And whether it's in the Western parts of the world, they are already there. They are already there. So, and already there's AI bots, AI lawyer bots that are already helping people, like what Takunda mentioned, Civic Guru. I mean, he literally said, I think he did it in 3 days or something. I was like, wait, I'm fascinated. What? How did this, come about? And it's something that, it's a simple solution that's going to just give you information, right, at the tip of your fingers, which you would have probably wanted to schedule a meeting, an appointment, and then you're like, no, can you please explain to me what does Section 70 say, what is my right to property and whatever. But now you can simply get it, and as a 5-year-old, I think there's an option of explaining it to you like you're a 5-year-old, So that's a simple solution to a problem, which then just accelerates access to justice and access to legal services, which I'm really for. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Joke. I'll answer it in 3 parts, Doc. Is there something that is being done? Yes, there's something that is being done by the ministry itself. Is it enough? It's not enough, not just from a ministry perspective. Because if you look at our legislative formulation in Zimbabwe, it's supposed to be driven by consultation based on the constitution. So is consultation happening? Consultation is to happen maybe at 3 levels, where maybe the portfolio committees, parliamentary committees come to the people. But many times we are the tech people. What push are we putting to our representatives within the legislature, to our parliamentarians, as a group of freelancers? Have we written a white paper, a blue paper, a black paper, whatever we call it, to our representatives within Parliament to say, this is where the world is going, this is the nature of legislation that we require? Because it should also come from that end, because that's their job. From the executive side, when you're now talking of the ministries, the OPC, so forth, it should be collaborative, where it's a multi-stakeholder approach, where all the stakeholders, the academia is feeding in. What is our reports or our research outputs doing to influence legislation, doing to influence legal transformation and reforms within the country, doing to inform frameworks and standards within the country itself? So that is one aspect which the academia, I'm coming back to you, Doc, which is supposed to push. Where's the technical environment and persons? What are we pushing in terms of proposed legislation? What legislation are we pushing for? You find there are different organizations here in Zimbabwe which can actually, what do you call it, do private legislation at different levels with our different institutions. Standards, what are we doing? Going to the other part, civic society. What advocates are we putting? Maybe advocates by litigation. Are we just saying no, or are we litigating those cases? Because that's a form of advocates, where we are taking those cases to be tested before the courts of law. And then the courts can pronounce themselves that, no, there is a gap here, and force the legislator to do what they're supposed to do. So is the ministry doing what they're supposed to do? Yes. Is it enough? It's not enough from a perspective of all multi-stakeholders. We need to do multi-stakeholderism and develop the law. I know I've answered like a politician.
All right. George said he has a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something on, on the measures that, from the law side you guys are putting in. I mean, there was a case in the States some time back where, Google and Facebook were being suspected of, leaking data and stuff like that. And the only thing they placed in place was, to have them in front of a forum thing and ask them questions. And it's the guys who were asking them questions, actually. Like, one of the questions that was asked to, I think the CEO of Google, or I think it was Mark, that if I connect my phone on Wi-Fi, does my phone have access to whatever information on my son, like that? And my question is, are they is it possible if we could only have like a certain body or organization that only deals with things that has to do with software only and govern that, so that we have people who are well versed in IT, than to just take a minister and say, Minister Ningi, represent us, something like that.
My learned colleague is throwing it to me. All right. So if you look at the states, you hear a lot of publicized Senate hearings. I think what you're referring to, it was one of the Senate hearings which was happening, a particular committee within that level. We have the same hearings which happen here in Zimbabwe, but usually they happen to public bodies being called to get answerable to parliament per se, if it's in Zimbabwe structure. So if we are equivating it to there, you'll find the ICT and Media Portfolio Committee is one of the routes that you can use within Zimbabwe to have some of those questions calling in people to come. But beyond that portfolio committee, do we have structures that are able to do that? I can mention about 5 structures that are able to do that. We have the competitive commission, what do they call it? Competition and Tariffs Commission. Yes. Their role is to make sure there's fair market play within the space. So if, for instance, there's about to be creation of oligopolies or monopolies within the market, they come in. For instance, if maybe another bank wants to buy another bank, they have to get approval there. So you find instead the same commission plays a huge role. So we now have 2 pillars. The portfolio committee, that commission. Thirdly, with the creation and coming in of the Data Protection Act, now Cyber and Data Protection Act, we have the creation of about 3 levels within that particular act. One, the designation of POTRAs as the Data Protection Authority. So if there are issues to do with data protection, by legislation, they become the de facto to deal with those issues. And among that act, or within that act, we have also the Cybersecurity Center, so forth, which is also its mandate there. So we have that level again. 4th level, which if fully utilized, so how I'm answering, I'm saying structure-wise, we have the structures. But are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's a question of another day. So we have those instruments. If there are now issues to do with intellectual property, 3 levels which you can deal with, which become the 4th level there. The first level is ZIPO, Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office, ARIPO. If you are managed enough, ARIPO, WIPO. Because they don't take RTGS. Doc, please take me from this stage. That is 1. 2, we also have from the different legislations, we have the civil parts of remedy, because every time there's a breach, by law there should be a remedy. So it's either taking the civil remedy, going to the civil courts, depending on the quantum of your issue, magistrate up to the high court, even appeals there. Or take criminal proceedings against the perpetrators, which can then adjudicate where there are issues there. Depending also on the level of the contract or the agreements, issues of arbitration. So do we have the institutions to deal with the issues, which are equivalent to the institutions which you are seeing in states and so forth? Yes, we have the institutions. We also have consumer something commission, council, which is also dealing with consumer rights issues. So we have those institutions, because most of those institutions, by international agreements and international law and international treaties, most of those institutions are required within those treaties and agreements. So we have them. But are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's another question. I didn't say no, I didn't say yes. Don't quote me. I said more can be done. They need to be capacitated technically, financially, administratively to do more. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, because of time, I will not be taking any more questions, but during the networking time, I'm sure Cade and Rutendo will still be available to talk to you on a personal level. So thank you so much for coming and for participating. So yes.